Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending upon where you have joined from. And welcome to another webinar from Data Platform Geeks. Today's our webinar is on digging data from hard to reach websites with Microsoft Power BI. And our speaker is Tim Heng, who is an MVP from Australia. My name is Satya Ramesh, and I will be the host for you for next 1 hour. And Aarti Nambiar is helping me with moderation. So before we move forward, a quick word about who we are and what we do. eDominer systems have a couple of brands. SQL Maestros do a lot of advanced trainings on SQL Server, Microsoft Data Platform, and artificial intelligence related technologies called master classes. And SQL Maestros also offers a couple of self-paced learning solutions called learning kits and hands-on labs. And SQL Maestros is coming up with video courses on SQL Server performance tuning and T-SQL querying and programming. I'll talk about all these things a little later. Peopleware India, which is a corporate training unit of eDominer, and eDominer also have a ERP product called Expand SM ERP. So our today's concentration is on Data Platform Geeks and SQL Server Geeks communities, which were founded by Amit Bansal, under which we do a lot of free in-person events, webinars across various cities in India and abroad as well. And once in a year, we do this annual summit called Data Platform Summit in Bangalore, India. So here is a picture of recently concluded Data Platform Summit, wherein more than 1,000 people attended from 300 different companies who traveled down from 16 different countries. Across these 3 days, there were 100 plus sessions delivered by 50 plus speakers. Again, they traveled down from 20 different countries. So if you're working in data analytics and AI space, this summit is a must attend for you. So if you wish to learn more about Data Platform Summit, you can visit dps10.com, or else you can simply drop an email to contact@dps10.com. So here is a picture of Data Platform Geeks team and eDominer team on the stage of recently concluded Data Platform Summit 2019. Here is a DPG core team, Amit Bansal, who is a founder and president, and Manohar Punna, who is a vice president. And you can see various other regional mentors across India and abroad. If you wish to become a regional mentor, you can simply visit dataplatformgeeks.com and fill out a form. Or else if you want to become a speaker in our free events and webinars, you can fill out a form as well from Data Platform Geeks. Here are the eDominer teams that helps us to organize all these free events. And special thanks to Microsoft for supporting us in our community efforts. Right now, you're a member of Data Platform Geeks. If you have not a member and you used direct joining link to join the webinar, you can go and become a free member so that you will be able to notify about upcoming events and event resources and free videos, labs, magazines, etc. Please make sure events at dataplatformgeeks.com is added to your address book, and dataplatformgeeks.com domain is whitelisted so that you won't miss out on any of our updates. Beyond this webinar, if you have any questions, you can use our social channels. Here is a Facebook group, LinkedIn group, and Telegram channel links. You can use them to join the groups. You can join right away, so someone from our team will approve your membership right away. So all our webinars will be recorded, and we will be putting up them under youtube.com/SQL Server Geeks YouTube channel. And SQL Maestros also records a lot of performance tuning related videos of SQL Server and T-SQL querying and programming videos as well, are all available for free under youtube.com/SQL Maestros. So you can go ahead and watch all SQL Server videos there, and you can also subscribe to both the channels, so you will get a notification whenever a new video is uploaded. And here is a link again for you to join Telegram group. So there are so many upcoming webinars and in-person events lined up. So you can simply visit dataplatformgeeks.com/events to go and register for all these events. You can see the list here. And the first one is the today's webinar, and you can see other webinars on Power BI, SQL Server, and machine learning and Python as well. So just visit dataplatformgeeks.com/events. Just log in with your credentials, and you can register for all events with single click. So without any further delay, I'll just hand it over to Tim. Tim, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you to Data Platform Geeks for having me here today. So welcome to everyone who's attending the webinar. My name is Tim Heng. I'm an MVP from Australia. Let me just share my screen. I've got access. Okay, so hopefully people can see the screen. I'm sure someone will step in and tell me if that's not the case. It's good to see we've got some people here and that not everyone has abandoned us for coverage of the Australian Open, where I think we've probably got what should have been the finals between Djokovic and Federer playing right now. But for those of you who are here, hopefully you'll be able to get something useful from this presentation. So today we're basically going to be looking at how to get data from hard to reach websites using the tools that are available within Power BI. Depending on whether you've used Power BI and the similar tools in Excel, Power Query, you might know that you can connect to different websites to pull data, but there are a couple of problems that you can run into depending on how websites are structured. So the goal of this presentation is essentially to look at how we can overcome some of those issues. So a little bit about me. As was mentioned, I'm a Microsoft MVP from Australia. I specialize in Microsoft Excel, and so a lot of my work has been in the Excel space, Power Query and Power Pivot, and so naturally Power BI is an extension of that, essentially. I'm a director of a consulting firm called Some Product, named after the Excel function, for those who know it. We specialize in financial modeling, model audit, data transformation, and we do a lot of training in Excel and Power BI around the world. Me personally, I've got over 15 years experience working with data and developing financing and operational models. And for the record, I bat right-handed and I bowl leg breaks. Not very effectively, but certainly enough to turn a little bit, let's say. So this is relevant for our presentation because a lot of the presentations I do on Power BI and Excel need some sort of data source. And one of the challenges I found in preparing for this webinar is that the data sources I would normally use are simply not relevant for a lot of the participants who will be on this call. So I understand that a lot of participants today are likely from India. And so naturally, in trying to find a suitable case study to talk about today, I basically looked for the one common language, I guess, between Australia and India, and that is naturally cricket. So with that in mind, we're going to try and do a few things. Firstly, we'll show you how to use the basic get data from web functions. When we've got data that comes in multi-page lists, we'll showcase a way of how you can basically connect to multiple pages and import all of several pages at once. What to do when a site doesn't have defined tables. So one of the challenges that falls over in Excel in particular is that when you connect it to a website, it needs to have the data sorted in a table as such, so defined as a table on the website itself. And if it's not the case, then Excel Power Query lacks some of the tools that Power BI has to be able to interact with the website and start pulling out data in a more structured way. And then if you're still having troubles trying to connect to the website when even the tools within Power BI don't automatically give you the information that you're looking for, then we look at some other tricks that you can use to try and get that information anyway. So we're going to start off with a very controversial question related to our case study, and that is, who was the best test batsman of 2019? We can see we've got Stephen Smith and Virat Kohli on the screen. I'm sure everyone on the call has their own opinions about this. Certainly it's not going to be David Warner or Marnus Labuschagne, but I'm sure there are many different ways that you can measure this, the answer to this question, whether it's in averages, runs scored, higher scores perhaps. And so this is essentially what we're going to be looking at different test batting scores, both in 2019 and throughout time. And we're going to try and analyze this and pull this data into Power BI, not so much to actually analyze it ourselves, but to showcase how we can go about connecting to the different data sources to bring it in. So without further ado, I'm going to jump out of Power Pivot or Power Point and move over to the web. So for my data source, so everyone at home can play along as well if you would like. What you can do, I'm using the ESPN Cricinfo website in order to source all of these statistics. So this is all publicly sourced information. You're more than welcome to try and go to the site and pick up these stats as we go. So we're starting off with the 2019 test match list of high scores. So this is a page that you can access by going to the stats section, looking for the 2019 records and searching for the high scores. And so in our list here, we've got scores like the 335 runs that David Warner has scored against Pakistan recently. Virat Kohli scored 254 runs against South Africa recently, and so on and so on. It's nice to see India features very highly in this list. So what we can see is the table's structured in what's very clearly a table on the website. And this makes it very easy to go off and get data from the site itself and bring it into Power Query and to Power BI. So if I open up Power BI, what you can see here is the basic splash screen that you would get when you log into Power BI. And to get data from the site, you can simply click on the Get Data button, or in the top left-hand side, you have the Get Data button as well. And we can find our web data source, connects to a web page, and then copy the link from Cricinfo into our Power BI desktop page. So all of these examples are going to be live. I've prepared a couple of examples on the side, but for the most part, we're actually going to be doing live demonstrations. So please forgive me if the internet doesn't play ball here. Here we go. We've got our From Web dialog box. We'll pop back into our browser and copy the link. Head to our From Web URL and paste it in. So most runs in an innings, class 1, which is test matches, I believe, ID equals 2019. So we're looking at the 2019 year in particular. So when I hit OK, this is now establishing a connection between Power BI and the website. It brings open the navigator pane, which allows us to see a list of the different items on the site on the left-hand side, and a preview on the right-hand side. So I can see, generally speaking, every website contains a document section, which is simply the HTML code that underpins the site. And we have a high scores section. This high scores is effectively a defined table that exists in the website. So in much the same way, if anyone has used Excel, you can define tables in Excel so that Excel knows the difference between words and numbers and actual tables of data with headings and data types and formatting and so forth. Websites have the same principle as well, where you can define things that you display on a website in a table or tabular format. And so here, this high scores list is something that's been defined by Cricinfo as a table that can be accessed and downloaded and has certain properties like columns, for example, that you wouldn't have in an unstructured data source. So to pull this in, we can tick the box next to the high scores list. And if I like, I can transform this data before bringing it into Power BI. Clicking transform will bring this page into the Power Query editor within Power BI. Everything here looks more or less standard, I suppose. So what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to rename the name of this query, 2019 high scores. Click close and apply in the top left-hand side of the screen. And this will load the data from the website into Power BI, where I can now use it in my charts and dashboard visualization. So process is fairly straightforward when you have data that is presented in a simple tabular format on a website. Hopefully that makes sense. I understand that if we're doing questions at the very end, so if you wanted to ask a question, you can put it in the Q&A or chat box, and I expect that the moderators will be picking that up and putting them all together for presentation afterwards. Someone please correct me if that's not the case. So that's our basic get data from the web. Only works when things are in a table format. It only works when things are on a single page. Now, the second item that we have is not just 2019, but the batting records, innings by innings of all time. So this you can access by going to, again, the stats section of Cricinfo, heading to Stats Guru, which is their query tool that they use in Cricinfo, and searching for all innings, all batsmen, all countries, sorted by innings list. And so we can see here there are over 1,900 pages with more than 95,000 innings listed. So this is every test innings of all time since the 1800s. And for anyone who knows their cricket, they know that Brian Lara has the top test score in test cricket in a single innings, 400 runs against England. So this is a multi-page data set. The data itself still appears to be structured in a table, so we can see different columns, we can sort it by different items, so runs scored, number of minutes they batted, and so on. But at the top of the page, this thing about page 1 of 1909, we can choose different pages to pick. So we can click on the next page, the third page, we can go to the last page, and so on. So when we pull data from the site, generally speaking, in Power BI, we only have the ability to get one page at a time. So we need to find some way of parameterizing the site that we're pulling the data from, and pulling in not just one, but 2, but 10 different pages at the same time without needing to create 10 different queries and then appending the data together, because that's a lot of manual effort used to create each query link to each individual page. So we'd like to be able to just copy the link and use this in Power BI, but in a way that we can also reapply it to page 2, 3, 4, and 5. So before I move on, I'm actually going to look at this link and then compare it to the page 2 link. So if I click on the next page item at the top of this table, we should be brought to page 2 of this list of innings. And here we can see the link has changed ever so slightly. There is now this element called page equals 2. Now, this to me is a clue to suggest that if I wanted to get page 3, page 4, page 5, I could simply change this parameter from page equals 2 to 3, 4, and 5 respectively. This is the clue that we need to be able to bring this data into Power BI more effectively than just creating separate queries for each page. So in order to make this happen, I'm going to select the link here. This is the page 2 link, which has that page equals 2 parameter in the link. And when I go back to Power BI, let's get data from the web. You'll see that there is an advanced type of section that we can use, which breaks down the URL into different parts. Now, I can paste this link into here, and that will show me the whole link. But I'd like to be able to split out the 2 item onto a separate line. So I can put that in the second line here. And then likewise, I can take what's left of the link and put that into the third part. So now this link is broken up into 3 different parts in our request. The first one gives us the main site, along with the fact that we're looking at test cricket. The second part tells us which page of this query that we're using to generate our results. And the third part tells us that we're looking for results, we're looking for batting, we're looking at on an innings by innings basis. So it's all parts of the query that are being put together, but we're parameterizing this single 2 element so that we can basically swap it out for different page numbers later on. So this is what we can do to kind of split those parts apart. I'll hit OK, and what this will do, this will create a query in Power BI that allows us to connect to that data source again. So let's see what's on this page. As we suspected, we've got the HTML, but we also have this innings by innings list. Now, this is still in a table, so it's a separate table format. We can pull this in directly into Power BI. And again, we're going to transform the data and work with it in the Power Query editor within Power BI. So this is our innings by innings list. If you're familiar with Power BI, you would know that you have the applied steps on the right-hand side. If you click on the source, you can see how the web link has been broken up. We've got the start of the web link combined with the to value combined with the end of the web link. So this to value is now something that we can set up a parameter for to run multiple different cases where we run page 2, page 3, page 4. So let's do this. There is a Manage Parameters button that we can use in the Home ribbon. And so if I set up a new parameter, I can call this the Cricinfo page number. This parameter is going to be a number type, and we can let it be any value. Perhaps we'll start off with a value of 2, just to make sure that we've got everything working correctly. Okay, so we've got a value of 2. When I go back to the innings by innings list, I can go back to the source, and instead of the value of 2 in inverted commas, I can put a reference to the Cricinfo page number. So let's put a reference to the Cricinfo, that's not going to work, page number. Okay, so here's a problem. One of the issues with combining different parts of our link is part of it is text, but we've defined the page number as a text value, or as a number, sorry, not a text value. One of the problems with the inputs that come through is that when you combine different text items using the ampersand operator, Power Query is not quite as friendly as a lot of other programming languages or even Excel itself, in that you can't apply that operator to text and number types. You do need to convert the value from numbers to text. So in this instance, we actually need to perform a secondary step where we're taking that number and we're converting it to text from the value that we have selected in the Cricinfo page number. So here we go. We've updated this value. It's going to be a value of 2. We're feeding it into the web link. It's now combining with the other parts of the web links in order to connect to the table. And when we move down the steps in our innings by innings list, we should come to the next corresponding item. So let's see what's going on. We're starting off with page 2. It's interesting that it's actually giving us the value for page 1 here, which is the Brian Lara score, which is not what it was doing earlier on. Let's just double check this. If we make this a value of 3, we go back to our innings by innings list, and we refresh the preview. This is supposed to give us a slightly different page. That's that's right. This is not actually giving me the value I need. Try that. Yes, so I must have deleted the hash symbol by accident. So here we go. This is page 3 of our Cricinfo page. And likewise, I can change it to page 4 and page 5 quite easily. So we've gone through the basic task of bringing the website or the web link into Power BI. We've created a query. We've split that website link into several different parts so we could create a parameter for the page number and feed that parameter value into the query. Unfortunately, this is still only giving us one page at a time. So what I can do is convert this into a function. Now, a function in Power BI is something that we can use to basically run this code that we have to go to the data source, pull in the table from the data source, and give us the result. And we could call this function for a range of different inputs. So if I have a list of 1 to 10, I can feed that list of 1 to 10 into the function in order to generate a list of pages from page 1 through to page 10 and get 500 results rather than 50 results. So to do this, we can take the query that we've just created, this innings by innings list. If we right click on this query, there's an item here called create function. Creating the function will allow us to basically set up that function to feed a value into. So let's call this all-time high scores. So here is our function, all-time high scores. If we want to use this function, we have to put in a value. We have to feed it that page number in order to let that function actually work. So it might need to be page 1, page 5, page 1900, however many pages we have to look at. Now we need to actually set up a list to use this. So what I'd like to do is create a simple list of numbers in Power Query and feed it into this function. So I can go to New Source and create a blank query. Now, a blank query is literally that. There is nothing in the query itself. So we need to generate our own data source. Now, one of the tricks you can use is to generate a list of values, or a list of incremental values from one value to another value. So I could say equals, open curly brackets, 1 dot dot 10, for example. And what that will do, that will create a list of values from 1 to 10 that I can use in Power BI. If I were to set this to be 1 to 20, that would create a list from 1 to 20 accordingly. So a much bigger data set, obviously. We'll leave it at 10 for now, just so that it doesn't take too long to download the information we're looking for afterwards. So we've got this list of 1 to 10, but it's not technically a table as far as Power BI is concerned. So we're going to need to convert this to a table using the convert button in the top left-hand side. OK to get through this dialog. And now we're left with a table with a column, column 1, and a series of numbers from 1 to 10 in this column. Now, this is important because a list of numbers is simply just a list and it can't contain any additional columns. What we actually want to do is to create a new column that contains the output from the all-time high scores function that we just used. So let's add a column. Let's go to invoke custom function. And this will allow us to create a new column, all-time high scores, where we're using this all-time high scores function, and we're feeding it a page number that's based on the values in column 1. So the first row will pick up the first page of the highest scores of all time. Second row will pick up the second page, and so on. So let's hit OK. And what's happened here is that this query has now gone and fed those 1 to 10 numbers into the function. And underneath each of these represents a table of the scores, those top scores from 1 all the way to 500. So from here, I can expand out this data set. Let's get all of the data, and we'll get rid of the column name as a prefix. And this gives me our top 500 list, going from highest to lowest. So I can scroll down, I can see the first 50 rows come from the first page of data. And then as I get to rows 55 onwards, I'll see we've got page 2, page 3, page 4 accordingly. Now, I can see that there's a problem here. So I'm on page 4 at the moment, and we have quite an old score. So Hammond made a score of 227, but of course, if you know Hammond as a batsman, that was a very, very long time ago. And so some of the data that's available for some of these very old scores isn't actually available. So in the case of his fours score, for example, we seem to be getting an error rather than getting the actual values that we're looking for. Now, we'll find this in a few different instances. I believe there's also an instance, where is it? I think that might actually be the first instance where there's an error. Now, what's actually causing this error? This is an interesting sort of point. If you look at the list of values in the forwards column, all of these generally are numbers. Now, if you look at the list of values in the balls faced column, which is very similar, but it's not quite obviously. The numbers all appear to be left aligned, and that's because in the underlying query, that innings by innings list, the column balls faced is actually a text field and not a numeric field. Now, this is actually an interesting point here, because the reason it's a text field is because it sees that there are dashes in the number of balls faced. Naturally, it's not going to go to the extent of saying that a dash means 0 necessarily, because a 0 is very different from an unknown figure. As you can see in the sixes column, there are items here that are actually 0 as opposed to unknown. So when we've got an unknown value, Stats Guru has represented the value as a dash instead. So in the case of 4s, our first set of 50 rows didn't have any unknown numbers of 4s. However, when we actually expand it out and look at the larger data set, we do find that we actually have these dashes and unknown 4s here. So as a result, the best way to go would be to come back to this innings by innings list query and change it so that it doesn't convert the numbers to actually numbers and just leaves them as text, because we can clean up that data afterwards. But it's very difficult to clean that up after the fact as such, after it's converted and created an error. So what I'd like to do is to come back to this innings by innings list, convert them to text instead. This should replace the change type step that always comes up whenever you download data and bring data into Power BI. So we'll get rid of that step. I can see that we also have the fixes item here. So that's a numeric field, but just in case that data is not recorded somewhere else, we're going to convert that to text as well. Replace the current step. And likewise, in terms of the number of innings, I'm also going to change this to the text as well. So replace current step. Okay, so that should be cleaner now, I think. That should mean that we don't get errors later on. And if I go back to my query, what we'll find now is that the 4s is now a text field because it recognizes, or any field really, but you can see the numbers are represented as text here rather than numeric because they're left aligned. And that's because we made the change to the innings by innings list in this query in the top left-hand side. And because the query very conveniently is linked to the function, changes that I make to the query are automatically going to change the function as well. And so this is flown through to my final query that I'm using here. If I go back down to row 152, I think it was, where is Hammond? Here we go. We can see that the number of 4s we hit was unknown. And so we can leave that as an unknown value rather than replacing it with an error or having to replace errors with zeros or nulls or other such things. Okay, so this is our query that we can use. We'll name this query top 500 batting innings. Excuse me. So hopefully this makes sense. This is basically our way that we can go through and connect to multiple pages in a data set that's presented on a website. If I want, I could have gone back to the source here and changed this from 10 to 1900 in order to capture all of the pages on the site, to make it 1909 or 2000. Of course, if I do that, that will take a very long time. I know this because about an hour ago, I set this going on a separate computer, going from page 1 to page 2000, and I can see in the background of my office here that it's only up to row 33,000 after 1 hour out of 95,000. So if you want to set this going, you can have all 95,000 test innings, but it will probably take you several hours to download that information. Okay, so this all works very nicely when we have tables on the website. I'm going to move to a new data set on the Cricinfo website, which is the data relating to the ICC World Test Championship, which I understand India is leading and is currently undefeated. So I'm looking forward to the India versus Australia final at this rate. So this is a page on the website. It's got information about the different scores and different matches that have been held in this test championship. However, it's not in a clear tabular format, which means that Power BI might struggle a bit when it actually tries to pull this data into Power BI. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to copy the link here and head to Power BI. We're going to, let's close this query, close and apply. I probably should have done this a little bit earlier to give it time to load the different queries. We'll leave this to load the top 500 innings. This is where I have to say that in Australia, I'm very jealous of the internet connections of everyone else around the world, because I think this latest stat said that Australia has somewhere in the bottom quartile or the bottom third of countries around the world for internet speed, which sounds surprising given the first world nation that Australia is, but maybe kind of makes sense considering that we've got a very large area and not many people to fill it. So our internet infrastructure here is extremely poor. Okay, so it's loaded via 400, 450, and soon to be 500 innings. So now that that's done, we can go off and start picking up new data. Let's get data from the web again. And this time we're going to go to that test championship site. ICC World Test Championship. Now, when I connected this site, this didn't have a formal table that we could see on the page itself. So we're going to need to see what we actually pull out from the site, what information becomes available to us. So let's see what it connects to. Here we go. So all we have is the HTML that underpins the website, which unfortunately does not give us very much information that we as simple data users can actually pull out from the site. However, this is where Power BI is a step more advanced than where Power Query is right now. Power BI has this feature called Add Table Using Examples, which you can see in the bottom left-hand side of this Navigator tab. If I click on this, for anyone who's used the Columns from Examples tool in Power Query, Columns from Examples allows you to type in a value and let Power Query work out what is the formula it needs to give you that answer from the data that you have. Table from Examples works in a very similar way, where what we can do is type in the data we would like to see as our answer, and then Power BI will go to the website and look through the HTML code and find the different elements that help form the answer that we're looking for. So at the top of the screen, we see a preview of the site. At the bottom of the screen, we see where we can actually enter in the answers that we're looking for. So for example, I might want, as a first point, Australia. So let's type in AUS as our first answer. The second answer we want here will be, let's say, New Zealand. Then the third one, I don't want it to be India. The third item in this list is actually England. So we're going to type in England in this list. So we tried to make a prediction as to what the next item should be, and it didn't do a very good job of that. However, now it's identified the fourth item should be Sri Lanka. The fifth item, if I scroll further down, is Australia. Sixth item will be India. Seventh item will also be India, and so on. So now I think it's actually picked up the correct values that it should be. Brilliant. So this is first team. Likewise, I can do the same thing to find the second team in each of these pairings. So Australia plays England. New Zealand plays Sri Lanka. Then if I scroll down again, let's see, let's scroll too far. England plays Australia. And there we go. Sri Lanka played New Zealand, Australia played England, India played the West Indies, and so on. Fantastic. So this is now our second team. Likewise, I can get all of the scores from each of these sets and pop them in through here. So first team score is going to be 284 and 487 with a loss of 7 wickets declared. The New Zealand score was 249 and 285. And as I scroll further down, again, I probably need to fix this up very quickly. The England score is 258 and 258 declared. And hopefully the rest of them have actually gone through and been populated accordingly. Finally, I can repeat this process for the second team score. So bear with me while I just type all of these in quickly. 374 and 146, 267 and 268 for 4, and then finally 250 and 154 for 6. So we've basically typed in the details of the first 3 scores that we were looking at. And what that's then subsequently done is populated this list from the rest of the items in the table. So it's going to get all that information for us automatically. I can hit OK. It's worked out the example of what it is that we're searching for. It's going to put this into a table, and we're going to bring this table into Power BI. So if I were to take that table, transform this data, pull open the Power Query editor. So we can see here, this is the full list of the matches so far in the ICC Test Championship. We typed in the first 3 rows of values, and Power BI used that information to go through the code on the page and pull out the remaining 22 matches, which is really useful for us. This means that it's very easy for us to find a large page of data that's in an unstructured format, like we have on this ICC Test Championship page, and just feed in a few examples for Power BI to then subsequently work out what it needs to do in the future. The particular Power Query code for this is in this extracted table from HTML step. So HTML.table is an M function that's available in Power BI, but not available in Power Query. So if you were to copy this into Power Query, it does not work, unfortunately. But you can see what it effectively does is it goes and creates a column and then looks at the site and finds where to get the item that we've actually typed in. So it's gone to the score item, gone to the nth child, gone to the team, gone to the truncated score, found the abbreviation of the name, et cetera, et cetera. Repeating this for all of the other different items that we've asked for. And then it's going to repeat this for every time it looks and finds score collection content. So this is a really great way of just going to a random website, finding data that's in an unstructured format that's not defined, as you can see here, as a classic table, and allows us to go through and just pull that information out and tease it into the format that we're looking for. The nice thing about this is, assuming the website doesn't change, in the future, I should be able to refresh this list and future match results should continue to appear at the bottom of this page. And so I guess the ultimate test will be, if you download the file after the webinar, you wait for the next few matches to be played, you can then refresh it and see if it actually works. So I'm going to rename this table ICC Test Championship. And we can close and apply and load this into Power BI for use. Now, while this is loading, we can consider that this doesn't always work, unfortunately. Actually, no, before we go and look at the case where it doesn't work, let's look at another case and another tool in Power BI that we could use. So suppose that we are looking through the ICC Test Championship. We see that the next test match is between New Zealand and India in Wellington. So what we're going to do, we're going to go and try and book our hotel in Wellington to go check out this match. So I've gone to booking.com to book a hotel in Wellington from the dates 19th of February to the 26th of February. So I'm there a couple of days early and leaving the day after. What I'd like to see is, how can this be brought into Power BI as well? Now, there is an additional tool in Power BI called Web Table Inference. Now, this is not a tool that's built into Power BI as standard at the moment, or it's not activated in Power BI as standard right now. You need to go to the options and settings, go to options, and find the preview features. Preview features over here. and pick up this new web table inference item. Now, when you select this item, this will prompt you to restart Power BI in order to actually start using this feature. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to tell me that I need to restart Power BI to make this work. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this file that we have here. Let's go to Data Platform Geeks, webinar, and this is our webinar live file. So we'll save this file, we'll close down Power BI, close Power BI, and then let's reopen Power BI and see what's different after we've enabled this preview tool. So this preview tool allows us to go into a link and copy that data in a different way. So let's reopen the webinar live file and let's get data from the web. Once Power BI starts being operational again. Let's give it one more minute. Okay, resize. One of the bugs in Power BI, unfortunately, that means that we can't actually use the ribbon until we minimize and reopen. Bit of a silly thing in Power BI right now. I've been asking for that bug to be fixed for a long time. Okay, let's get data from the web. Let's copy in our booking.com web link. And when we connect to this, we should see a slightly different interface now. Instead of seeing the document of the interface, what we're actually going to see is the, any tables that might exist on the page, but then there's going to be a number of suggested tables. Now, these suggested tables are Power BI's effort to try and find some of those table from example type things and present them for us. So the HTML tables are essentially the tables that are actually designated tables on the website. Here, the only table on the website appears to be a calendar. However, suggested tables, these are tables that Power BI is suggesting that we can pull out from the data that's available on the site. So this table 2, for example, contains information like the Oaks Wellington, the Cure Wellington, Sea Hotel Wellington. This corresponds to all of the different hotels that might be available for us on the site. So if I were to take this table, for example, like that, we can see it's got a lot of the information that we might be interested in, the rating of the place, number of reviews. I wonder if it has the pricing here. Excellent, it has pricing as to how much it's going to cost us. That's brilliant. I can transform this data, bring it into Power BI, and I can actually take a look and see how has Power BI tried to identify this table as being useful for us. We go to the extract table from HTML. You can see this is where it's found all the relevant details. SR, hotel name plus, BOI link, review score, and so on. So what Power BI has done here, it's actually gone through and it has tried to come up with its own inferences, its own suggested tables, and present them to us. Generally speaking, it'll come up with a few, somewhere between 3 and 8, I've found as my experience from connecting to different sites. Generally speaking, the first couple of tables are probably the most reliable in terms of the types, I guess the most accurate ones that you might want to actually use. But also remember that if it doesn't give you a table that, or if it can't suggest a table that you actually want to use, you can also still use your table from examples to put together a table as well. It uses the same technology, the only difference being that here, this web table inference is doing it for you automatically without relying on you to manually suggest different values to it. So booking in Wellington. Let's save, close and apply, and this will load that information to Power BI. Now, the last part of this presentation is actually going to be something that was inspired by a consulting visit that I had this afternoon. A client of mine asked me to pull data from a website. So let's go to the next website in this list. This is basically a list of different types of assets or items that you might have in the home. And there's a drop-down box here that allows you to search for average values, quality values, or prestige values. And this changes the value of, or the cost of those items. Now, the problem with this site is that this is not a tabular bit of data. And if I were to pull this particular site into Power BI, let's get data from the web. Because of the steps I needed to take to actually get to that part of the site, I needed to put in a few items and fill out a form and do a couple of other things here. When I tried to do this, it simply failed. It couldn't actually find any useful information for me. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think this actually redirects to another site. So there are a couple of different ways that you can still try and get data from sites like this. Notably, if you can't actually pull the data from the site because it redirects you somewhere else in the browser, what you can do is in Chrome, the shortcut is Control-U. In other browsers, it's a slightly different shortcut, but go and pull out the source of the data instead. So this is the underlying HTML and JavaScript and other bits of code that you might use to have that website work. So if I were to pull out this prestige value, 2922, I can actually do a search in this page, and sometimes I might find 2922. This is the value represented by prestige, or the quality is 1597, average is 921. With these values, I can actually create some sort of a script that maybe looks through this code and pulls that information for us. So if I like, I can go to my File Explorer. I'll just right-click and create a notepad item, download site, and then I can copy and paste all of the text into this notepad. So if I save this, one of the cute things that Power BI can do now is connect to that particular file. So if I go to connect data from text, let's connect to that download site file. It will recognize that as an HTML file and allow me to pull out information I might try and get out of this file. So here now it's suggesting a table, air conditioner, and with columns with average, quality, and prestige. Unfortunately, it's not quite got to the data and the level that I'm looking for. It's not picking out the dollar value that's assigned to each item. Okay, so what can you do now? The basic tools in Power BI haven't worked. Add table using examples doesn't work. I know this because I tried it this afternoon. What can I do instead? Well, from Notepad, one thing that I can do is basically remove the top items in the Notepad, and that will effectively stop Power BI from thinking that this text file is actually a web page. And so when I save this and go back and try and connect to that text file again, text CSV, pick this download site, instead of converting it to a web page and treating it like a web page, it's now going to treat it like an actual text file. And so I can look at the raw data in the text file and find the relevant items that I need to find to pull out the information I'm looking for. So if I go and find, let's see, that item for air conditioners, air conditioner heat pump split system, I can see the values for the items are in these three rows here: 921, 1597, 2922. So with this information, what I can actually do is use the basic tools in Power Query now, the basic text manipulation tools, and start splitting out those items into different parts. So, for example, I can find this air conditioner system, find the spacing in front of the sets. Let's use that, and I can split this column. Go to Transform, Split Column by Delimiter, where specifically I'm looking for all of those spaces the first time. That's going to create a new column here that only contains the values associated with our air conditioner, as well as maybe some other values that I can filter out fairly easily. So there's our air conditioner. This is the portable air conditioner. This is the air conditioner, window, and so on. And so I can repeat this process for anything else that I'm trying to pull out of the text file or this different code in particular. Maybe I can pull out things that relate to this input type hidden ID equals, and then pick out the rest of the values in a separate column. That allows me to filter on those values and connect it back up to the actual item types that I've pulled out in a separate column. So when all else fails, if you can't use all of the fancy techniques in Power BI, you can still go back to the raw text item and manipulate it that way, much as you would with any other data source. So where does that leave us with all of this? Well, we haven't really found an answer to that question of who was the best batsman in 2019, but hopefully we'll have covered items like creating functions to get our multi-page data source so you can download all 95,000 test settings. You can use the web table inference or table from examples to get things from unfriendly websites. And if all of that still doesn't work, then you can just go old school and work on the underlying text in the website itself, the code itself. All right, so I guess this opens it up to Q&A before we run out of time. So I can see that, actually, I might put it back to the team at Data Platform Geeks. Do we have a specific moderator who's going to read out questions, or would you like me to read out these questions?
Yeah, we'll take Q&A a little in a while. I just have a couple of slides to cover, then we can take Q&A.
Sure, no worries.
Yeah, all the audience, meanwhile, please put up your questions using Q&A panel. And beyond this webinar, if you still have any questions, you can use our social channels, Facebook group, LinkedIn group, and Telegram group to post your questions. So the links are available in chat window. You can join the groups right away, and we will approve your membership right away. And SQL Maestros is coming up with video courses on SQL Server performance tuning and T-SQL querying and programming based upon master series, wherein there are a lot of advanced level modules that are going to be covered, and all these modules will be updated constantly. And the best advantage of subscribing to a video course is that you can watch anytime, anywhere, and as many times as you can. So we are going to announce these video courses shortly. So if you wish to learn more about video courses, the content that is going to be covered and pricing, etc., you can visit sqlmaestros.com, or else you can simply drop an email to contact@sqlmaestros.com. SQL Maestros also offers a self-paced learning solution called Hands-on Labs, wherein you will be provided with a document that will have step-by-step instructions followed by screenshots, observations, explanations, etc., so that at the end of the document, you will be able to become an expert in that particular topic. Right now, Hands-on Labs library has more than 100 plus labs on SQL Server, Azure, Power BI, Analytics, Cosmos DB, etc. So you can go ahead and subscribe to any DBA volume. You can purchase any DBA volume, Dev volume, BA volume, or else individual labs that you want to purchase, etc. And there are a couple of free labs also. If you want to see how this hands-on labs quality, there are 3 labs available for free. You can go ahead and download for free at sqlmaestros.com. So if you wish to learn more about sqlmaestros.com, you can simply drop an email to contact@sqlmaestros.com. So yes, here are the list of upcoming events again. If you wish to attend, just visit dataplatformgeeks.com/events. We have already posted a thank you note about today's webinar on LinkedIn and Facebook. So just the link is available in chat window. Please go ahead and give your comments and post your feedback there. That will encourage our speakers to come back and deliver free sessions for the community. So please don't ignore this one. Give feedback in our LinkedIn and Facebook groups. The links are available in chat window. So with this, I'll hand it over back to Tim so that he can take Q&A. Tim, you can read out the question and you can answer the question as well. Right now, there are no open questions, but I request people to use Q&A panel to ask your questions.
Excellent. I saw there was one question in the chat section, I believe. So I might as well address that one very quickly. So someone asked if we can use Python and R to gather data from websites. And so my answer to that is that Python, and my understanding is that Python and R are capable of scraping data from websites. you probably need to look up the appropriate Python scripts in order to do so. I'm not a Python expert, so I can't comment about which packages and which tools you should use to actually gather data from different websites. But certainly within Power BI, one of the options you have is to get data using a Python script. So as long as your Python script is set up to scrape the data from the website, you can run that script in Power BI and get the outputs of it into your Power BI data source. Just waiting for any other questions into the Q&A panel.
Looks like there are no more questions anymore. So we request everyone, if you have any questions, please ask using our social channels. We'll get them to Tim and get the questions answered. So thank you, Tim. Thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And with this, we'll conclude the webinar, and the recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel shortly, and the resources will be shared within a thank you mail. And please don't forget to give your feedback using our social channels, LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you all.